Now I'm going to shift into what to do after you graduate. So, give you some perspective. So society in the coming years are going to face some of the greatest challenges ever. So we have dwindling resources, right? So power, we have, we don't have sustainable power resources right now to, power the entire world, right? So sustainable energy from water. So a lot of people talk about in the future, wars might be fought over access to water itself. Physical space is a problem. We have populations that are growing older and older. So some people are now estimating that people will live 1,000 years in the future, and people who are born today might be some of the first people to live 1,000 years in the future, right? As we continue to have these medical advances, where people are going to be able to live longer and longer, that means fewer and fewer people are going to be dying, right? The death rate is going to go down, and so we're going to have, these bursting populations, right? So that becomes an issue in and of itself. There are healthcare needs for everybody. So things like, everything from cancer to things like diabetes, right? And there's lots and lots of these issues that are huge issues. They're not about like what product can we create and sell a lot. It's more like we need to address these issues so that we can maintain our current lifestyles and our current quality of life. Okay. At the same time, while we have these challenges coming up, or actually present right now, we have continuing advances with science and technology. Right, we get smarter and smarter every day. We have more and more capabilities, and with that, computation is costing less and less. Right, so we have more and more computational capabilities. We have more and more knowledge of the world. And so the question is, how can we, start to apply this to these particular problems? Okay. One of the things to keep in mind, and you're kind of in a privileged position for this, is that software is really, really unique. It's the one form of property, if you can call it, that can be created forever. You create a piece of software, it can be distributed for virtually no cost. Put it up on the web, anyone can download it, right? So this is an extremely important point, right? Software is a tool. You give a piece of software to someone, they can do something that they're not able to do before, okay? It's performing work for them. And so it's really the only instance of a tool, an actual tool that's transforming something into another form that can be copied ad nauseum, right, or ad infinitum, right? You can continue to distribute it without any real cost incurred to you. Okay? So the key here is that anyone really has the power to change the world through software alone. All right. So as some examples, Linus Torvalds, right? Back in the early '90s, he's kind of disgruntled at the fact that the Linux, what's the operating system? You should know this. I should know it. I can't remember the name of it. So anyway, this educational operating system was not open source or easily copied and distributed. So he starts writing his own kernel, right? And then Linux emerges. Okay. So open source software surrounding, or the ecosystem surrounding Linux is estimated to be worth billions of dollars a year. Right? This is a project where he started out as a hobby, and he significantly changed the world by making this operating system freely available. Right? Imagine, so operating systems now are commodities. You don't have to pay for an operating system, right? You can just get Linux. And so this has had a huge impact on the world that can't be overstated. Mark Andreessen, when he was in CSA, he developed Mosaic. This was the first graphical web browser. Right? And again, the world has never been the same. Once you have this graphical web browser out there, then HTTP takes on a lot of value. Okay? Napster. So this is interesting because you guys are now kind of really disconnected from the original Napster. So does anyone know the story of the original Napster?
No, the story. Just the original.
So you know the original one.
Yeah.
Does anyone know the story? Yeah, College Road.
So it was some guy who was trying to get music from his friends and stuff, but it was really hard to share on computers.
Right.
And
So
then write this program that we did.
exactly, that's what happened. Shaw Fanning, not a great programmer. Okay, he just wanted to be able to get access to other people's music files more easily. So he creates Napster, which then turns into a commercial company, which then starts to change the content industry, the media industry, significantly, right? Before Napster, the only way that you really got music was by buying it, right, or taking it from other people, right? Then he made it insanely easy for you to find music and download it with very, very little effort, okay? And so this gave rise to peer-to-peer file sharing and so on. And again, the media industry, the content industry, has not been the same since. So his little itch of being able to, wanting to be able to get music much more easily, has changed the landscape of an entire entrenched industry. Right? BitTorrent, same thing. Right? These are little applications we take for granted, but these are huge threats to entrenched media providers. Right? So these have had an enormous effect on the world. Firefox. So these two guys, they like Mozilla, but they didn't like the bloat. So they're in high school and they take a fork of Mozilla and they start creating Firefox. And the way that they figured out the feature set was one of them would go to his mom and say, "Hey mom, what's hard about the internet?" And she would just go off and say, "Oh, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard." And you take that feedback and you go and roll it into Firefox to make it simpler. So this is how Firefox was born. You guys were in high school. Okay? So, what was the secret to their successes? Well, it's pretty easy. They had an idea, and then they put in a lot of hours to make it work. Right? Again, Sean Fanning was not like a brilliant programmer. He just had this idea, and he pursued it until he made it work. Okay? Now, it's your time. You're at that age where you can put in a lot of time, and you can have this idea and then change the world. So, the question is, how are you going to change the world? What new markets are you going to create? What power structures are you going to disrupt? Okay. How are you going to make the world a better place? You've gone through Waterloo now, you have your computer science background, you've taken the courses. How are you going to put this all into place? How are you going to make the world a better place? So some rules to guide you. See, these are the rules that I follow when I'm faced with big choices. So it's too easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day life, right? Where you're like, I need to do this, I have this assignment tomorrow, I have a midterm next week or a final next week, whatever. And not really think about the big picture, right? And so that your time is spent, dealing with these day-to-day routine tasks rather than stepping back and saying, well, what would be a much better place for me to get to? So some